Ladies and gentlemen, Tempest is back. And I'm going to show you a build that I think allows Tempest to be viable again in 2v2 and in Conquest. So the idea is you're supporting your team like a normal Tempest with Menders and Aura Share, but you also do a little bit of damage on top. It's a little bit more aggressive than a normal Tempest. So let's go over the traits. So in air you have Zephyr's Boon. This gives you Fury and Swiftness whenever you grant an aura to someone. It also gives them Fury and Swiftness. This is really good because Tempests they used to have a trait that gave them Swiftness whenever they used an overload, and they removed that, so you lost a lot of Swiftness uptime on Tempest and you're really slow. So this gives you quite a bit of Swiftness, and this helps you to be more mobile, which is really important in Conquest. And the Fury is also pretty good for air Ellies because you have a lot of ferocity, and yeah, you want to be critting to get some value off that ferocity. Also, your allies might want some Fury as well. Storm Soul, you increase your stun duration by 33%, which is really good because you have tons of Shocking Aura, and you do a little bit more damage to stun foes or disabled foes, which is also pretty good. Lightning Rod. So whenever you disable a foe, you weaken them, which is really good because that's preventing them from doing damage to your allies as well, which is appealing for them. And you do a decent amount of damage, and this stacks up over time. So yeah, Lightning Rod is probably one of the better builds for like any kind of LE right now. It's definitely really strong, so it's kind of what makes this build work in a way, because you do damage simply from this trait, and a lot of the other stuff is just kind of to make it fit a role in a team. Next you have Water, because you're still a support spec, you want to be healing people. I take Piercing Shards because I like the Vuln duration and the damage increase when you have Vuln, but literally anything in here can be useful. Soothing Ice is a little bit too high cooldown, 60 seconds, not amazing. Stop, Drop, and Roll though is really good because Chill is really rough for you to handle as an LE because it makes your attunements a longer cooldown as well. So Stop, Drop, and Roll is a really good choice too, especially versus like Firebrands or like Condi Revs, right? You remove burning as well, so you can take that as well. It just depends on the matchup, but in general, yeah, this is going to always give you value. And Healing Ripple, it will proc, so basically whenever you go into water attunement, you'll heal nearby allies, but this also procs when you do overload water, so you want to be next to your allies when you use this, and then stay near them obviously. Soothing Disruption gives you regen and vigor when you use a cantrip, and cantrip recharge is reduced by 20%, which is really nice because I'm using 4 cantrips. The thing about this build is it has a lot of self-Condi cleanse from the either renewal heal, but not a lot of Condi cleanse for your allies. And a lot of Tempest builds in the past kind of didn't really have too much Condi cleanse as well for their allies, except with Soldier Rune. But I'm not using Shouts, so the Condi cleanse that I give to my allies just comes from overloading water. So they kind of have to have their own Condi cleanse. And yeah, powerful aura. So whenever I use an aura, I will give that to nearby allies, which is super strong because there are a lot of auras like Focus 5 on fire or Dagger 3 in air that give out auras only to you. There are some Tempest traits that give them to allies at the same time, so aura sharing doesn't give you that much value there, like Elemental Bastion, but Unstable Conduit gives it to you, right? So when you share it, it gives you insane teamfight presence, because say for example you have everyone on your team has Shocking Aura. It gives you so much presence in a team fight, right? Because they're just going to get stunned, especially now that stability uptime has been nerfed. So yeah, it's really good. So yeah, obviously you take Unstable Conduit because you're aura sharing. You take Invigorating Torrents because you're giving out a lot of auras, which means you're giving out a lot of regen. And that's really important because regen still heals for quite a bit, and this adds up over time. So you definitely need to be giving out regen and vigor to your allies. It's super important. So yeah, this trait combined with this trait means that whenever you do an aura, you give 4 boons to your allies: vigor, regen, fury, and swiftness. So that's really good because you're giving those out constantly, basically. And yeah, some people would say Harmonious Conduit, but the 4 seconds of stability, while it's really good for your overloads, you really need the regen uptime and the vigor for your allies. This is kind of like a selfish trait in a way, and this is kind of like a little bit selfless trait. So if you're supporting your allies, yeah, you definitely want this. Elemental Bastion, whenever you give an aura, you heal, which is just really good because you're giving out a lot of auras. So this is what makes the support spec work. So I'm using Menders Amulet and Radiance runes. So my aura duration is increased by 33%, which means my Shocking Auras go from a 3-second cooldown to a 4-second a 3-second duration to a 4-second duration, right? So where is it again? Radiance. So yeah, that's really good. And it's just more Shocking Aura uptime, which is disabling people, giving you more Lightning Rod procs. You could consider things like Soldier, but I'm not really using shouts. And yeah, you could go something like Water Rune. I think that gives Condi Cleanse to your allies when you use a heal skill, but then you can't use either renewal that conveniently. So I just like Radiance because you give out a ton of auras, and just longer duration on them means you get more value out of it. And it also gives you a little bit of vitality, so that's always nice. I use Savagery on my sigils because, you know, the stun duration, I don't think it actually stacks with Storm Soul, but 3% more damage against stun foes is pretty good, right? It might stack with this, but I haven't really tested it. And I use Sigil of Cleansing because this build doesn't actually have that much cleansing, so other than Ether Renewal, which is a cantrip, by the way. It has a 14-second cooldown, so if it doesn't get interrupted, Ether Renewal gives you a lot of Condi Cleanse, but you do have to be careful and use it at a time when you think you won't get interrupted, which can often bite you in the butt. So yeah, those are the runes and sigils and the traits. For the utilities, I take Armor of Earth, Mistform, Lightning Hammer, and Tornado. Now in 2v2, you don't really need Blink or Lightning Flash because you're not really making plays or rotations, so you actually don't need this. But if I were in Conquest, I would be removing Mistform for Lightning Flash, probably. You really need the stability more than the Mistform because it allows you to land a lot of your overloads, and Mistform, you can't really do anything while in Mistform other than Stomp, but you already have Focus 5 for that. If you're trying to make like a Res or a Stomp play, you can already do that with Focus 5. You don't need Mistform for that. So yeah, you would take Lightning Flash instead, or if you're against a really aggressive comp where all you need to do is survive, you can get rid of Lightning Hammer for Lightning Flash, and then you'd have the most defensive setup. But I like Lightning Hammer because it gives you way more CC, and I'll show you the abilities in a little bit. They do quite a bit of damage. So my elite is Tornado. With the cantrip trait, is a 48-second cooldown, which is really insane because it does so much CC, which procs Lightning Rod. Now, it doesn't do any damage normally, but with Lightning Rod, it actually does quite decent damage. And it has unblockable CC on the 3 skill, which will knock people around. And the 5 skill obviously will do a nice little leap kind of attack, which will do another CC. And that's just really good because, first of all, rezzing is really good in this meta. So a lot of times you need to disrupt a res, and Tornado does that really well by just knocking people everywhere. And second of all, Tornado actually enables a lot of your combos, because what you'll do often is you'll like Tornado someone, and then that'll start your CC combo, and then from there you can Shocking Aura and then Transmute it, and then Gale, and then from there like you can do Lightning Hammer or something like that, and all the while your teammates are probably doing stuff too. So it just adds more CC to your kit and allows you to do some nice combos. You want to basically give your team Shocking Aura off cooldown, and you don't want to transmute it immediately because it's a really long duration and you want to get value off of that. Give your team Swirling Winds. You have a lot of projectile reflect on this build, so one thing that's really important in this meta is that Lich Form exists, so countering Lich Form with reflects is pretty important. So what you can do is use Swirling Winds to start off, and then immediately swap into Earth. Now Earth is going to have a 4-second cooldown before you can use the Overload Earth. While that's coming up, you'll have your Swirling Winds still going. It's a 6-second duration, right? So you use Swirling Winds, for example. This is your kind of like your reflect uptime rotation. Then you go into Earth, and then you wait for Overload Earth to be ready. You cast it, and then you use Magnetic Wave to cover yourself while you're in the Overload, and then you'll get Magnetic Aura, and that'll give it to your allies as well. And the Lich will basically be maybe 10 to 15 seconds over at that point, and then you can kind of like tank a few shots maybe, or use your dodge skill. You do have a lot of dodge skills, right? So Earth 3 is a dodge. It's also a leap. So that's pretty important because in fire you actually give out a few fire fields, and if you leap through a fire field you give yourself fire aura. So if I put this down here and I leap through it, I get fire aura, and that's being shared to my allies, so it gives them healing and all the other boons. So yeah, that's pretty important. Obviously the Earth 2 isn't too important to use, but Magnetic Wave is really important because it's a self Condi clear of 3 Condis. It doesn't say it there, but it actually does. And that's really important to save that for yourself a lot of times, but you can also use it for the reflect in those situations where you need it. And Obsidian Flesh, you got to be careful with using this because you can't cast skills while doing it. So oftentimes you'll be in a situation where like you're getting focused and you have to Obsidian Flesh. So you have to decide between whether you want to cast Overload Earth, because you can't like Overload Earth and then cast Obsidian Flesh, because there's nothing that you can cast while using Obsidian Flesh. So you have to either Overload Earth before or Overload Earth after the Obsidian Flesh, because it'll interrupt it. So you want to kind of like decide when you want to use it, and that depends on how much pressure you're taking. And if you're taking way too much pressure, what you can actually do is you can Overload Earth while in Obsidian Flesh, and when Obsidian Flesh ends, it'll also cancel your Overload Earth, so it won't finish casting, but it will give you the prot uptime and the stability uptime, and you can immediately swap to water and start regenning again if you really need to increase the tempo in which you're using your sustain rotation. So that's something important to recognize. In water, you have a blast finisher here. That's really important because if there are any chill fields, like if you're playing with Reapers, you can blast that for an aura, which would heal your allies. This is also a blast as well, Comet, but this is really important because it's also a daze, which procs Lightning Rod. And yeah, you just get chills here, which is really nice. The water too is a heal on your allies. So if you're stuck in water attunement and you don't have overload water up, use water too. And you got to be facing them to do that. And in fire, the 3 skill is a really high damage ability. It does, well, I didn't crit there, but it can do up to like 3k damage, which is pretty good. And it's also an evade. The 2 skill, not really that important, and flame wall not that good other than for making combos for fire auras. And in air, I already talked about this a little bit, but you want to use convergence pretty much off cooldown because it's a decent damage increase. And yeah, it's just more weakness. So you want to be, like in a team fight, you'll go in, you'll probably Shocking Aura immediately, Swirling, you'll probably do Overload Air to get another Shocking Aura on your team, then you'll probably transmute that, and then you'll knock someone down, maybe you'll do a burst with the fire, give out the Fire Aura, then swap to water, you'll do the blast in your fire, maybe you'll do a comet as well in the fire for another blast in the fire, which will give like 6 might to your allies. Maybe you'll do some chills. If your team needs healing, use your overload water. If not, don't waste it. Go back into air, and this will probably still be on cooldown by then, but you can overload air again, or you can go to earth and do some immobilizes for your team. If you're taking a lot of pressure as well, you have a lot of defensives, and yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. Like it's not very rotationally based like Weaver. It's kind of like situational how Tempest works. So it's kind of like, you'll see later in the gameplay how I use the playstyle. There's a lot of CC in the Lightning Hammer, and it allows you to do really big bursts. So yeah, normal burst kind of looks like this. You'll Shocking Aura, knock them down, then you'll do Convergence. The next stun, you'll Air Overload, and then once you get that, you'll probably do Fire. At this point, you can go Earth, stay in Earth, go into your Conjure. While you wait for the Overload to come up, you'll do the 4 maybe if you get close. If you want to CC someone, do the 5, get them in there, knock them out, and then use 2, and then I've got 2 Lightning Rod procs from that. Actually, that was 3 because I knocked them into the wall as well. So that was 3 Lightning Rod procs, and I got some decent damage. Yeah, that's pretty much how the burst works. And yeah, the 4 skill, you gotta just use that near them and it'll do some decent damage. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And that's it. So like this video if you like this kind of content or this build, and leave a comment below if you think that lightning rod maybe is a bit strong right now and maybe it should have been nerfed a little bit more, or just leave a comment down below and just come out right and say I'm an Ellie apologist. You can do that too. But yeah, that's it.